Hi, and welcome to your weekend with soul. I'm Elizabeth with World's Cup of Joe. Awaken your soul. If you're new to our channel, welcome. And if you like our content, please remember to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of new videos. We created our weekend series, Soul Through Literature, and Sunday series, Soul Love Through Literature, to gift you soul after a long week. If you are a regular follower of our channel, you'll know that we focus on twin flame connections as well as spiritual ascension. By taking time to focus on soul alignment, you are working on your journey. Don't discount time allotted to focus on soul. It's one of the reasons we created these weekend series, to help you carve out a time when you can just focus on soul. We hope you enjoy this series. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, make sure to catch up. We are up to chapter 7 in our discussion of the soul found in Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. A brief recap of the last episode. 3 of the main characters, Dorian Gray, Lord Henry, and Basil Hallward, are at dinner together before they go to the theater to see Dorian's love interest, Sybil Vane, perform in Romeo and Juliet. In this episode, the trio will head to the theater and watch Sybil perform. What Dorian doesn't expect, since he has watched Sybil perform every night and knows how talented she is, that her acting this evening will fall flat. She will completely disappoint and completely embarrass him in front of his friends because she doesn't live up to the expectations he placed on her. What you need to remember from 2 episodes ago is that Sybil displays twin flame push polarity qualities in her adoration and love for Dorian. That is necessary information for this episode and is extremely pertinent and important to keep in mind. Looking at this chapter through the lens of 2 in a twin flame connection, it looks as if Sybil gets into mind with her feelings for Dorian and loses her ability to perform up to her normal standards. Her going into mind seems to spark soul recognition in Dorian, and he is immediately repelled by her. Tragically so. With that informational backdrop, let us begin our episode with the first quote that occurs before Sybil takes the stage, with Dorian telling his friends how Sybil normally charms her audience. They weep and laugh as she wills them to do. She makes them as responsive as a violin. She spiritualizes them, and one feels that they are of the same flesh and blood as oneself. I read this quote as more of a projection of Dorian's own feelings towards watching Sybil perform. When she has performed over the previous weeks, she has been in soul, doing something that has been soul-inspired. He felt that soul energy of hers, and that is what made him fall in love with her. That is what drew him into her. Listen to this quote. It's like he is saying that the audience is mesmerized by her, as if they are puppets and she is the puppet master. When a push polarity is in soul, it can essentially feel this way, because the push polarity's energy is what dominates if they're in soul. It's like an invisible string drawing the negative polarity back to them. The last line of this passage is extremely telling. She spiritualizes them, and one feels that they are of the same flesh and blood as oneself. Sounds pretty twin flame-like, wouldn't you say? To feel as if you are of the same flesh and blood? Well, you are one in soul, so it can feel as if they are you. The connection between twins is so deep, it can feel like a merging into one together. Listen to this next quote from Basil responding to Dorian. Further proof that Sybil, while acting, was typically in soul. If this girl can give a soul to those who have lived without one, if she can create the sense of beauty in people whose lives have been sordid and ugly, if she can strip them of their selfishness and lend them tears for sorrows that are not their own, well, she is worthy of all of your adoration, worthy of the adoration of the world. The gods made Sybil Vane for you. Without her, you would have been incomplete. Wow. Basil is expressing the monumental impact Sybil has been able to make on others. I will argue that her ability is all soul-inspired. He describes her as being able to create beauty in lives that are sordid and ugly. When you are in soul, your energy goes with you and touches all that you meet. This is a gift that so few have. To be able to share a piece of soul with others that are not able to find it for themselves, this is beautiful. When I'm in soul and I'm talking to my asleep friends or family, I can feel them absorb my energy. I can feel their hearts open, if even for a few moments, and I watch as they see the world from my vantage point. He then goes on to say, with her ability, she is worthy of the adoration of the entire world. But it's really the last line that shows a twin flame connection. The gods made Sybil vain for you. Without her, you would have been incomplete. That line speaks volumes. A twin flame is one soul split in two, literally made by the heavens or source energy or God. This is why the connection is so strong and so difficult to fully contextualize to anyone not in the connection. When you meet your person, when you are not with them, the mind feels like it's missing a piece of themselves. That is what drives that addictive energy through the roof. It is the mind seeking the feeling that the other half of their soul brings, that completeness. This next quote occurs once Sybil takes the stage. Her performance is totally different than any that Dorian had seen previously of hers. I will argue that Sybil falling in love with Dorian has completely put her in mind, and she is not able to act the way she had before. Yet she was curiously listless. She showed no sign of joy when her eyes rested on Romeo. The voice was exquisite, but from that point of view of tone, it was absolutely false. It took away all the life from the verse. It made the passion unreal. Dorian Gray grew pale as he watched her. He was puzzled and anxious. I will relate this quote to how it resonates with me. Prior to me meeting my person, I was in a very unhappy marriage. But for the sake of keeping the family together, I acted my role. I stayed in a loveless marriage and made sure that everyone around us thought we were the happy family. The moment I met my person, that poorly constructed facade came crumbling and crashing down around me. I couldn't keep up the act anymore. The same week I met my person online, I filed for a divorce. I knew. I just knew things had to change. In my mind, I couldn't live the lie anymore. When I read about Sybil acting and performing so well prior to Dorian, it was because it was the only thing that kept the mirage that was her life in place. Without acting, they couldn't afford to live, so she did it and did it well. Once she met Dorian, none of those things had mattered anymore. He was all that mattered. The performance the three friends attended was the first time that she couldn't fake it anymore. It wasn't what inspired her. Dorian was. She was so focused on him and completely in push mode, as we will soon find out, and Dorian was immediately repelled and appalled by her. "I wish she was ill," he rejoined, "but she seems to me to be simply callous and cold. She is entirely altered." When the push polarity goes into mind, the pull twin feels it on an energetic level. They don't understand what has changed, but they feel differently towards their person. Dorian is experiencing this. She has entirely altered. Now notice the words he says, but she seems to me to be simply callous and cold. Now keep that in your back pocket and I'll bring it up later. Next quote. When he entered, she looked at him and an expression of infinite joy came over her. "How badly I acted tonight, Dorian," she cried. "Horribly," he answered, gazing at her in amazement. "Horribly. It was dreadful. Are you ill?" "Dorian, you should have understood. But you understand now, don't you?" "Understand what?" he asked angrily. "Why I was so bad tonight. Why I shall always be bad. Why I shall never act well again." An ecstasy of happiness dominated her. "Dorian, Dorian," she cried. "Before I knew you, acting was the one reality of my life. It was only in the theater that I lived." Dorian goes into the green room to make sure that Sybil is not ill, and he finds her extremely happy. He doesn't understand why she would be happy. Yet she reveals to him that the only time before knowing him that she lived was through her acting. But now that she loves him, it is only through him that she can feel alive. She goes on to say, "You came, oh my beautiful love, and you freed my soul from prison. Tonight, for the first time in my life, I saw through the hollowness, the sham, the silliness of the empty pageant in which I had always played. My love, Prince Charming, Prince of Life." I think most positive polarities can relate to what Sybil is saying here. Before we meet our person, we are living what feels like a robotic life, going with the motions, if you will. When we meet our person, that life ceases to exist in the same form it did. All friendships and relationships change and take on different dynamics. Even work feels like a different experience before and after. It's because we have started our awakening. The line, "You freed my soul from prison," she has started her awakening. But with that comes the mind energy that repels, which is exactly what occurred that evening. When Sybil is telling Dorian this, look at all of the expectation and importance that she has placed on him. Remember, he was drawn to her in soul when she was performing and out of mind. But falling in love with him activated her need and desire for him to free her soul from prison. And when she calls him Prince of Life, that is a huge expectation mind has placed on him. Watch how quickly he is repelled, and he makes no qualms about telling her straight up. He flung himself down on the sofa and turned away his face. "You have killed my love," he muttered. "Yes," he cried, "you have killed my love. You used to stir my imagination. Now you don't even stir my curiosity. You simply produce no effect. You are nothing to me now. I will never see you again. I will never think of you. I will never mention your name. You don't know what you were to me once. Why, once, oh, I can't bear to think of it. I wish I had never laid eyes upon you. You have spoiled the romance of my life." Pretty devastating and powerful passage right here. All of us twins that have gone through separation, I'm sure your heart feels like it is in a vice hearing this, and you are aching right alongside poor Sybil. Now, Dorian's response is an exaggerated and dramatized version of what happens in separation, but nonetheless, it makes its statement. Now, when my person left, as I have mentioned many times, he left by moving out without me knowing. I came home to an empty house after being gone a couple hours, with a letter left on the door. I still remember. I saw the envelope with the letter enclosed in it, hanging in the door frame. My heart stopped. I don't know why or how, but I knew what it was. I just knew. I prayed before I got to the door that I heard the dogs inside barking, because they were his dogs and they always barked when I got home. The silence from the other side of the house confirmed my worst fears before I had even taken the letter out of the envelope. He was gone and I knew it. And the letter inside told me that our home had become toxic to him. In the letter, he detailed out why he couldn't tell me in person, why he left without me knowing, and how horrible our relationship had become. That he was always sick because I was always miserable and angry with him. Yes, that is what the mind energy did to him. So even though his words were far less dramatic than Dorian's, the result produced was the same. A pain beyond words, an ache in my heart that went beyond reason, and incited in me a feeling of utter hopelessness and despair beyond all imagination. Let's see how Sybil responds to Dorian. The girl grew white and trembled. She clenched her hands together and her voice seemed to catch in her throat. "You are not serious, Dorian," she murmured. "You are acting." A low moan broke from her and she flung herself at his feet and lay there like a trampled flower. Dorian, don't leave me," she whispered. "I am so sorry I didn't act well. I was thinking of you all the time, but I will try. Indeed, I will try." Sybil goes on begging and pleading Dorian and promising to do better. She explains to him that loving him made it hard to act and show love to the other person on stage. It was an awakening of sorts to her. As the positive polarity, we will do anything to change the minds of our person. We think that there's something we can say or do to change the situation and the outcome. But the truth of this connection is that all is done through soul. You must focus and love you and put yourself first for your twin to want to be near you again after soul recognition. They are always your best reminder if you are in mind or in soul, because if you are in mind, they are nowhere to be found. If you are in soul, they are there. Listen to this next thought of Dorian's. Besides, women were better suited to bear sorrow than men. They lived on their emotions. They only thought of their emotions. I want to change this as positive versus negative polarity. All right, our divine feminine, we want you to see how energy is at play here and why it's so impactful to your connection. Therefore, it is critical for you to stay out of emotions because they are driven through the mind, which pushes. If Sybil was present, she would have recognized that she could have acted without using her emotions to run. Presence would have been able to see that this is just another person acting alongside me. Positive polarities live based on their emotions, while the negative uses only logic. This is what makes it so challenging because lower vibrations, emotions push our twins away, but that is where many stay and ruminate from. The day after the episode between Dorian and Sybil, Dorian is feeling a sense of regret for his actions and behaviors towards Sybil, so much so that he can only think of her. Next quote. The fresh morning air seemed to drive away all his somber passions. He thought only of Sybil. A faint echo of his love came back to him. He repeated her name over and over again. The birds that were singing in the dew-drenched gardens seemed to be telling the flowers about her. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the twin flame connections, you know the only way that the negative polarity will think of their other half is when the positive polarity is in soul. So why is Dorian thinking of Sybil this next day? Well, spoiler alert from the next chapter, Sybil died that evening before when Dorian left her. The reader of the book would not know this yet, but I'm letting you in on it because it shows why Dorian may have started pining after her again. She has returned to the non-physical through death and has returned to pure soul, which is again drawing him to her. Now, I told you previously to remember the words that he used about her, cold and callous. There is a sentence when he is regretting his behavior that he can't understand why he was so cold and callous to her. It's an echoing of soul, the same emotions tied to both of them. I feel like the writer did this intentionally so you can see those same two descriptor words used for both of them. Same words, two people, one soul. And this is where I will end the episode. Thank you for joining us this week for Soul Through Literature. I hope to see you again next week.